have been a fan, since I was 6 or 7 years old. Evil referee Danny Davis had gone to the dark side there, and how in the heck can a referee do that? I think the first big opportunity for me came at House of Hardcore, and that got a lot more eyeballs on. Tommy Fierro, one of the most knowledgeable promoters that I've worked for. ISPW is absolutely on fire. Did a series of cage matches between Crowbar and Rick Recon, the Brooklyn Brawler against Bushwhacker Luke. So it was like being on WWF Superstars on Saturday morning back in the day. So during the pandemic, they did a drive-in show. Andrew Anderson gave me my start. I don't know how many years I have left that my body's going to allow me to physically do this. So I was going to walk away. The only time I've been legitimately knocked out in the ring.
Ladies and gentlemen, hosted by Coach C, Chris Sanders, this is Best for Business.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Another episode of Best for Business. I'm so pumped for this one. Pat Savino, man, thank you so much for joining me for this one.
Absolutely, Chris. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. So I'm curious for your journey. Obviously, I see it all over social media. You love pro wrestling, but I'm curious for you. How does your journey start for pro wrestling to get involved with it?
So interesting. I think, pretty much like everybody else in the business, have been a fan, since I was roughly 6 or 7 years old. I remember watching cartoons one day on a Saturday morning in New York, flipping channels, and all of a sudden this thing that I thought was boxing originally popped in, and it was a tag match between the Hart Foundation and the British Bulldogs.
Nice.
And this was the match where evil referee Danny Davis had kind of gone to the dark side there and helped the Hart Foundation win. And I said, how in the heck can a referee do that? The referees are supposed to be impartial. I'm thinking like umpires in baseball, and had to tune in the next week to see what happened next. Start seeing all these different colorful characters, and that's how I got into it as a fan. Years later, learning the inside of the business, or what I thought was the inside of the business, through the early days of the internet in the mid to late 90s. There was a post one day, if you remember, Georgianne Macropolis had run a newsletter, and there was a local promoter looking for behind the scenes help. I was a professional DJ, and I said, well, there's something I can do. I can do music. I can help out with production, that kind of thing. And that's how the ball got rolling. It was through a gentleman named Ricky O, who used to run Jersey Championship Wrestling. And he hooked me up with a wrestling school that he was starting with a few different trainers, Andrew Anderson, superstar Dave Greco, a few other guys. And that's how it all began. I trained for about a year and a half to become, because in my mind at that point, I was going to be a professional wrestler and take on the world.
So what made you decide to become a referee?
So great transition. Year and a half into training, as I said, 3-4 days a week. Had a little heart to heart with myself one day, looking in the mirror, getting out of the shower, and did not have what I considered to be the look. Definitely did not have the physique. Did not have the desire to get into a gym and pump the weights. I'm a smaller guy. I'm 5'10", about 165, 170 pounds at the time. So, this is in an era where, it's still about the giants. It wasn't about the smaller guys who can go at the time. There were a few here and there, but the majority of the business at that point was, the larger than life physiques, the larger than life personalities. So I was going to walk away. And at that point, I was working at Gino Caruso's school, and there was a gentleman there by the name of Rocky Jones. And Rocky had a show coming up that weekend, and came to me one day at training and said, hey, I need a referee. Would you mind, throwing on the stripes? And I had never thought about it before. And I said, well, I'm not really sure what I'm doing there. And he says, well, you've been training for a year and a half. You get the psychology of the business. Maybe you don't have the physical stuff that everyone's looking for. So maybe you try out as a referee. Come on down. So did it and kind of fell in love with it from there. And that's how the road began.
Do you remember the first match you refed?
The first match exactly, I couldn't tell you. I know The main event that night was Tito Santana against the Kodiak Bear. I remember
Nice.
Doink the Clown being on that show. I remember Little Guido being on that show, and just a bunch of the ECPW roster at the time.
Nice. So I'm curious when you look at your career, what would you consider like your first big opportunity in wrestling?
Well, when you're first starting out, you look for opportunities everywhere you can, reaching out to different promoters. This is long before social media
Yeah.
at the time. So you're trying to get phone numbers, you're trying to get, email addresses, that kind of thing, reaching out to anyone I can, a lot of word of mouth kind of thing. Just show up at shows and say, hey, I've been working as a referee. Is there anything I can do to help out? Put
Mhm.
up the ring, set up chairs, break down the ring, help out with security, that kind of thing, until a spot opened up here and there. I think the first big opportunity for me um, came at House of Hardcore several years later. Tommy Dreamer's old promotion, and he gave me the ball one night and kind of ran with it, and that got a lot more eyeballs on me than some of the smaller indies at the time. And from there, just kind of again branched out and word of mouth, that kind of thing. And the wrestlers themselves putting me over to promoters,
Nice.
saying I want to work with this guy. He knows what he's doing, that kind of thing. So yeah, that was the first really big one. That was my first chance to work in the ECW arena,
Nice.
which is kind of like my Madison Square Garden at that point because I'm 49 years old now. I know I'm never going to get the call to make it to any of the bigs at this point, but you still never say never in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
But making it to the ECW arena for me was definitely a bucket list item.
Nice. So I'm curious your career. There's a few promotions I want to ask you about if you have a favorite match you refed or any stories. The first one, do you have anything that sticks out from SWF?
SWF I was with for a long time under Rob Fury. Left there for a while, came back, did a couple of shots here and there. There were a ton of really cool stories that SWF played for a number of years, and for a number of years, they were consistently drawing really good numbers at Mega Slam and shows like that. As far as anything major that stands out, not really. They're it's an indie fed. That's not
Yeah.
putting them down at all, but they weren't the big time, indie fed. It's kind of a smaller, family friendly run kind of indie thing that's just there. And the problem is a lot of fans out there don't realize that there's a difference between one wrestling promotion and another. A lot of them, the casual fan just lump them all together as professional wrestling. So if they go to a show where and I'm not picking on anybody here, but if they go to a show where there's a lot of blood and violence and they have their kids with them, it's going to kind of put a bad taste in their mouth and turn them off to wrestling as a whole because they don't realize that the ABC Wrestling Federation is different from the XYZ Wrestling Federation.
Yeah. What about Titan Championship Wrestling?
So once the split happened between the co-owners of SWF at the time, I believe they were co-owners. I believe that Billy and Charlie did have a financial stake in SWF, but at the time, Rob Fury was going through some personal demons.
Mhm.
Thankfully, he's clean now and back on the right track. But they did split away and try to form their own branch. And I was with Titan for about 3 or 4 years and left there, due to money issues, creative differences, that kind of thing. But the way they first started it out, the way it was presented to me, I thought it was a really good hook because it wasn't just one or two guys who at the time only had 3 or 4 years of experience in the business trying to put together an entire show on their own. What they did is they got a bunch of us who had 20 plus years of experience at that point, myself, Magic, um, a bunch of other guys at that point, and we'd actually have meetings and try
Wow.
to put together cards and put together angles and put together storylines and lay everything out in advance for 2 3 months ahead of time. And that was a really cool idea and it worked really well to start with. But as time went on, the meetings stopped happening and it became just what the promoters wanted. And at that point, it's just and that and mostly it was the money because they ran a lot of stuff in South Jersey. I'm a New York guy, so it's a lot of
Mhm.
travel to get down there. And the money I was making at the time didn't justify the expense or the hours that I had to put in between travel and working and traveling home and everything else.
Yeah. I'm curious when you talk about being a New York guy, is there anything that you think stands out from like the wrestling scene in New York compared to anywhere else, you think?
It's really hard to run anything in anywhere in New York State
Yeah.
because of the athletic commission. Um, I don't know if a lot of your listeners are aware of the different rules and regulations, but Jersey does not have an athletic commission that governs professional wrestling.
Mhm.
So anybody can be a promoter, anybody can be a wrestler, anybody can be a referee. In New York, it used to be that everyone had to be licensed as a wrestler, as a referee. Any of the in-ring talent had to be licensed. Nowadays, it's only the promoters that have to be licensed in New York, so they take a big chunk of change just to run a show.
Yeah.
Also, New York is very strict on safety, and something I agree with to 100%. We have to have, a doctor in the back that does, blood pressure checks and, just general fitness tests on everybody before they step in the ring. We have to have an ambulance with paramedics on site during the duration of the event. And a lot of that is obviously, added cost for the promoter. That's why a lot of guys run in Jersey because they don't have that financial hardship at that point.
Yeah. So the last company I want to ask you about, Battleground Championship Wrestling, is it?
It is
Is there any
Battleground.
other matches or
Uh,
moments that stands out for you?
oh man, exclusively runs at the 2300 Arena, the
Nice.
ECW Arena, run by Tim Embler.
Yeah.
I did a couple of shows for them early on, just as kind of a gopher, and then they eventually brought me in as a referee as well. There's been so many incredible moments at Battleground, and he runs maybe 4 or 5 times a year tops.
Okay.
So it's not like it's every weekend. And the thing is, of keeping it in the same building and keeping it in the same arena, you have a lot of repeat customers. So they do understand. They know the storylines. They know who's the baby, who's the heel, that kind of thing. So there's been a really good amount of uh, talent that's been brought in. They did a few ECW reunion shows, which were always fun because seeing these guys, and most of them are well past their prime, but they still
Mhm.
go out and work, just as hard as they did back when they were in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
So it's always great when you have the legends there that are able to you ever sit there and pick their brain a little bit as to what works, what doesn't work. So a lot of fun stuff there.
Do you have a favorite interaction you've had with the wrestler? Somebody you got to pick their brains or learn from?
Oh, I mean, from a referee standpoint, there's been a lot of guys that have given me help over the years. And even to this day, with thousands of matches behind me, I'll still go to guys and say, "Hey, do you have anything for me?" Because and most of the time at this point, I didn't even notice you out there, which is the highest compliment a
Yeah.
referee can get. If I'm not noticed, that means I did my job. I'm out of the way. I'm there when I need to be. Um, Anytime I'm working with, anyone who's been on TV, any of the legends that know how to use a referee properly, those are always the most fun for me because that helps you get back and forth, transfer spots between guys, give time cues, all of that. A lot of the younger guys don't know how to properly use a referee to their full advantage because they're just going over and going out there and going through the motions of what they called in the back from A to Z. I prefer guys who can, call it in the ring, and that way they're responding to what the fans are doing and what the fans are wanting, and give them or take away what needs to be done at that point to tell the story that they're telling.
Yeah. So when we talk your career, there's one more company I want to ask you about. We talk about running often, drawing well, and bringing in names. How did your opportunity for ISPW start?
Mhm. ISPW was around several years ago,
Mhm.
uh, and Tommy Fierro, one of the most knowledgeable promoters that I've worked for as far as wrestling and stuff. Took a hiatus for a number of years. Did some private stuff outside of wrestling. Decided to come back at the towards the end of the pandemic.
Mhm.
He owns a wrestling collector store in Stockholm, runs ISPW, runs the 80s Wrestling Con and now the 90s Wrestling Con. ISPW is absolutely on fire these
Yeah.
days. Proud to be a part of it. And that was just, again, me reaching out a few times when he was running the cons originally. Hey, can I help out in any way? Here's what I can offer. I can do sound. I can do this. I can do that. Finally gave me a shot. When he first came, brought back ISPW. He gave me one match just to see what I can do. And from there, I've been booked ever since.
Wow.
Um, and again, even there, just learning from referee because I've been teamed up with guys like Jim Molyneux from ECW,
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
like Kevin Keenan from NWA, and former WWE. So it really gives me the opportunity to get into these guys' heads from a referee standpoint and to see what the best way to go about certain things is.
Is there an ISPW moment that stands out to you?
Oh, there's been so many.
Yeah.
Did a series of cage matches between Crowbar and Rick Recon that
Nice.
were incredible. Uh, as the kid in me, I had to mark out a little bit as we put together the matches one night, and I got to do the Brooklyn Brawler against Bushwhacker Luke.
Wow,
So it
yeah.
was like being on WWF Superstars on Saturday morning back in the day.
Mhm.
Um, there's so many
Yeah.
incredible moments. I did one, and talk about feeling out of place for and a lifelong indie guy doing Tommy Dreamer with Danny Doring in
Mhm.
his corner against Crowbar with Maven. I may have the managers mixed up there. I take a bump. Earl Hebner runs in for the 3 count. So it's just, what the
Yeah.
hell am I doing here, kind
Yeah.
of thing?
So when you hear ISPW, for you to be the senior official, what does that mean for you?
That means I'm trusted,
Yeah.
and that's the best feeling of all. When a promoter says, "Okay, you're my top guy as far as referees," and it's not all I do for ISPW. When we do the cons, the '80s con and the '90s con, I'm running a lot of the trivia contests. I'm running a lot of the karaoke stuff and the other things behind the scenes. I'll be helping to transport talent back and forth to the airport. It gives me an opportunity to get in their heads as well.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of stuff that Tommy has given me, and super proud to be, considered to be the top referee. And right now, working alongside Kevin Keenan as the other referee there right now, and just either one of us. I mean, at this point, with the years of experience that we have, we can still bounce stuff off each other, and just hey, this, let's tweak this a little bit. I think it makes more sense this way, and he'll bounce ideas off me. I'll bounce ideas off
Nice.
him, and we'll get to what we need to.
When you talk about hosting trivia and karaoke, does like ring announcing or commentating, like you ever attempted to do those?
I've done ring announcing in the
Nice.
past a few times. Just putting on the DJ voice,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Had a few, and again, to be in there and introducing guys that are legends of this
Yeah.
business, and even as a referee, you know, guys like Sergeant Slaughter, guys like the Nasty Boys, guys like Tito, guys like even Crowbar. There's so many amazing. My third show that I ever did. Third or fourth, whatever it was. I remember getting to the back, and they had the lineup up on the wall. And at this particular promotion used to assign referees to matches. Nowadays, most of the time, it's just the cards up, and me and whoever else is refing will, okay, I'll
Yeah.
take 1, 4, and 6. You do 2, 3, and 5, whatever it is. But this particular promotion assigned referees, and they put me in the main event that night with the Legion of Doom, and it's just, oh my god,
Yeah.
Mike and Joe, huge, Hawk and Animal, huge guys, guys I've looked up to for so many years, watching them, in WCW, NWA, WWF at the time, and to be in there and to be trusted with that spot means absolutely everything.
Yeah. I'm curious for you, what was it like for you personally during the pandemic, like the companies you were working for?
So during the pandemic, mostly what I did was for Titan. They were pretty much the
Okay.
only company that was running at that point.
Yeah.
They did a drive-in show, which I thought was a really cool
Wow.
concept, where we set the ring up outside. There were people in their cars. They did commentary over AM radio, so people can pick it up in their cars, which is a
Wow.
really, really cool idea. Um, the only issue is the shows themselves ran very, very long because, a lot of people were looking for work at the time. So there'd be 12, 15 matches on a card, and that's way too long
Yeah.
for the average fan to sit through.
Yeah. I'm curious for you when you
especially for
talk.
me because I'm doing like half of them.
I was gonna ask that, but I'm curious for you. Who would you consider in referee or even in pro wrestling like your biggest mentors?
Oh man. Andrew Anderson gave me my
Nice.
start, the reinforcer, so he's got to be on that list. Gino Caruso gave me a ton of advice early on. Through the years, other referees, Jim Molyneux and Kevin Keenan, again, give me a lot of stuff. Tommy is always in my ear about things. Crowbar, I've known now, and Tito, 25 plus years each.
Nice.
So always, great guys to go to for advice and things like that. Um, but pretty much everybody. I don't, want to, signal anybody out, but there's been so many people over the years that have gotten into my ear about, hey, try it this way or change it up a little bit that way, and not only telling me to do that, but telling me the why
Yeah.
behind it, and understanding the why helps me understand what exactly it is I'm doing out there and what I'm meant to do.
Is there a lesson or something that really sticks out when you learn from Andrew Anderson?
Uh, Andrew Anderson. So when I was training up for with Drew, it was still as a wrestler. So
Mhm.
he taught me a lot of how to bump, how to understand, crowd interaction,
Yeah.
how to get heat or be a baby at that point, how to listen to the crowd,
Yeah.
how to slow down when you need to. A lot of guys, the younger guys, tend to go way too quickly and just rush through their spots without listening to the crowd. And he mentioned that it's kind of like if you're reading a story to your young child as you're putting them to sleep at night. If you're reading the Three Little Bears, you're not going to go 90 miles an hour
Yeah.
through it. You have to give those pauses and just to let the crowd breathe and understand the story it is that you're telling. So he taught me a lot in that aspect.
Nice. When somebody asks you, is there a match that stands out that you've got to be a part of in ref?
I mean, I've mentioned a few of them
Yeah.
already, but the biggest regret that I have is not listening to the advice of another referee, Gary Morer, who's now down in Florida. He used to be in Jersey, all over the place. Um, he kept a literal list of every match he's ever done. Who went over, who went down, whatever. If he took a bump or not, where it was, the dates. And I
Wow.
wish I had listened to his advice early on and done that for myself, because I'm probably forgetting half the stuff I've been involved
Yeah.
in at this point. But just I really wish I had listened to him at that point and done the list, because I can look back at this point, because probably a lot of guys that I've refed are have gone on to become much bigger stars, and just not recognizing their original indie name kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Is there anyone that stands out?
Oh man, there's been a ton of guys that have made it to the next level. I love
Yeah.
working with Casey Navarro
Yeah.
when I see him. Joe Gacy a few times.
Yeah.
Jacob Fatu, uh, Seth Rollins, Batista when he was still Leviathan.
Wow.
Um, John Cena when he was still the prototype.
Mm.
So there's been John Moxley. Uh, you know, I can be here all day just
Yeah.
listing names.
Is the ECW arena like you'd say your favorite venue that you've refed in, or is there any others that stick out? Because especially Tommy Fiero, he runs a lot of different places too.
He does. ECW Arena is always going to hold a special
Yeah.
place in my heart simply because of the history in that building.
Mm.
Wildwood Convention Center for ISPW we just did last week, because there's been WWF used to run
Yeah.
that arena as well. The Mid Hudson Civic Center up in Poughkeepsie for ACW Awesome
Nice.
Championship Wrestling, and just knowing that when you're sitting in that locker room or you're in the ring and you're waiting for the guys to make their entrance and you're just kind of looking around and taking it all in, realizing the history in that building. I'm working in the same building that guys like Hogan worked and guys like Andre the Giant worked and so many others. And it's so humbling to be a part of it and be in that same space doing the same thing that they were doing.
Yeah. How did ACW come for you?
ACW just started up about a year ago or
Yeah.
so. Vic and Hale, the two guys that run it the now, have been on a ton of ISPW shows. They did House of Hardcore back in the day, so I know them from there as well.
Yeah.
And they had used they were using Jim Molyneux and Kevin and Chris for the first show, but then Jim moved to Florida, so a
Yep.
spot opened up. Vic grabbed me one day at an ISPW show and said, "Hey, you want to come up to Poughkeepsie?" I said, "I'd love to."
Nice.
And the rest is history.
Nice. Is there a moment in your career that you would consider like one of your biggest tests, either as a referee or ring announcer or anything?
What do you mean by
Like
test?
I know for some people in pro wrestling, for the wrestler aspect, maybe some of their facing, maybe like a name or someone at first, like anyone they were
Mhm.
nervous. But for referee, is there anything that stands out to you?
As far as nerves,
Yeah, or a challenge or anything you think?
probably the first time I was in there with New Jack, God
Okay.
rest his soul.
Yeah.
Jack, until he trusted you, and he eventually did with me, um, will will test you in
Nice.
there.
Okay.
Just even simple stuff like him choking a guy in the corner. I come over, and start doing my 5 count, try to push him back, and he'll literally yell and curse at me to get away from him. So it's like, okay, got
Yeah.
it, understood.
Yeah.
Um, but once he trusted me in there and knew me, it was smooth sailing from then on, and I understood that was the character and not him. But he was definitely one that scared me going in there, and just knowing the man's history
Yeah.
and the wild stories about him.
When you look at your career, is there a ref bump that stands out for you?
Oh, most of the ref bumps are usually just squishers in the corner kind of
Yeah.
thing. Heel in there, babyface charging, heel pulls me in the way. Um, Probably the one ref bump that stands out and totally my fault because I was green as grass at the time. The only time I've been legitimately knocked out in the ring. I was ring announcing a show for either USA Pro or UXW. It was in the Amazura Concert Hall in Queens.
Wow.
Um, and it was Balls Mahoney against Danny Moff. And the original referee, Hansen, had got bumped during the match. I pull off. I had a tuxedo T-shirt at the time, so I had to pull that off, revealing the stripes underneath. Go in, and they were doing a deal where I was kind of in Daddy Moff's pocket a little bit. So it'll be slow count for one, fast
Yeah.
count for the other. Eventually, Bull stands up, starts walking me backwards, yelling at me, kind of thing. I walk into Moff, turn around, raise his hand. Danny Moff tells me I don't need your damn help, and he was supposed to pull me in for a short clothesline. Grabs my wrist, pulls me in, and just my inexperience at the time
Mhm.
kind of turned my head at the last second, and his wrist bone caught me in the temple.
Wow.
Literally, the next thing I remember is sitting on the floor of the locker room and Al Snow kind of shaking me, going, "Pat, are you okay? Are you okay?" And I went, it's just kind of clear on the cobweb. I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You have a concussion." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
No clue at all. But apparently, I got up and walked myself out of there. So, and there is video of it. I don't have it anymore. It's not
Yeah.
available online
Okay.
from back then. But yeah, that's pretty much the only one that stands out for me
Yeah.
because it was a lesson for me on okay, don't do that,
Mhm.
because the natural instinct of any human when you're about to get hit is to turn away from the shot. And
Yeah.
in wrestling, a lot of the time, you have to turn into the shot. So, yeah, lesson learned big time.
So I'm curious for you nowadays, do you have any goals of wrestling or you're just doing it because you love it?
Doing it because I love it.
Nice.
The goal is always there to, you know, do something. I'd love to just at this point be an extra on one of the big shows.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm 49. No one's going to hire a 49-year-old man in a physical business and a young man in a young woman's game. Um, but my goals at this point are pretty much to try to teach the next generation. A lot of young referees that are just coming up now are always in my ear, always asking me for advice, always asking me to watch their match and give them pointers, that kind of thing. And I'm happy to do that because it was done for me.
Nice.
And it's kind of my way of, giving back to the next generation. I don't know how many years I have left that my body's going to allow me to physically do this, but I'll keep going as long as I can. Um, and like it just gets me out of the house and
Nice.
lets me do something that I love to do.
Nice. Well, Pat, I want to thank you for joining me. However, I've ended every interview the same now. The day you decide it's all done, which isn't happening anytime soon, but the day you decide it's all done, what do you want your legacy in pro wrestling to be?
As far as a legacy, I don't know if I deserve one, to be honest and to be fair. Um, the fans themselves, some of the smarter fans that understand what a referee does, and it's always nice getting recognition from them. I love interacting with the kids at shows. I'll do the thing where I'll call them into the ring. I'll raise their hand this way their parent can get a picture of them in the ring with
Nice.
their hand up as the winner, kind of thing. Around ringside as well. I love interacting with the kids because they still believe.
Yeah.
As cynical as the average fan is, I hate the term mark, as cynical as the average fan is, and they know what the deal is. The kids, the younger ones, still look up to it as, hey, the good guy is beating the bad guy, and if somebody grabbing the ropes or grabbing the tights, the kids will always come to me and tell me what happened. And okay, what's your name, buddy? And okay, I'm gonna let them know in the back. We're
Nice.
gonna check
Yeah.
the tape and make sure it goes better the next time. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Let them feel like they're a part of it. As far as legacy, like I said, the fans aren't going to remember me, but the wrestlers themselves, I hope they look back and say, I was happy to have Pat in there as my ref. He knows what he's doing. He always takes care of us in there.
Nice. Pat, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it, man.
Chris, anytime.
Thank you, Pat, for doing this, and thank you, everybody, for watching this episode. This was Best for Business.
Thank you for watching this episode of Best for Business. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, because this is Best for Business.